Because we're live. Hello, everyone. I am Wisteria Rose, the independent author of 3 books now. It feels so good to say that. And I'm joined here by 2 of my writer buddies, Amanda and Katrina. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you guys, and then we're going to kind of hop right into discussion. So who would like to go first?
Amanda, you want to go? You're in the middle.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hey, y'all. I'm Amanda Ross. I'm a speculative fiction author. My first book, To a Stare with Love, came out last June. It is a first in a very magical, very political, wonderfully vampiric novel. And book 2 will be out this fall.
Hi guys, I'm Katrina and Lewis. Well, Katrina writes on Twitter and Instagram. I'm also an indie writer. I write fantasy and romance predominantly. And I have my first novel coming out May 17th, Heavy is the Head Love and War. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited for that book too, honestly. I've been waiting for it to be released so I can read it. You too, Amanda. I love your book.
You.
So I'm just super, super excited. We all seem like we're going to have something coming out this year.
I'm trying to get on your level.
Oh, that's me. I feel like I'm not publishing fast enough sometimes, but then I'm like, I got to give myself a break.
You're
like I'm on book 3.
You're doing great. Trust me.
Thank you. Thank you. So today's stream, I kind of just wanted to mirror what we did for my last release week, which thank you guys for joining me on that. I had so much fun talking to you. It is kind of talk about our experiences in the industry and if anything has changed, especially now that we're all a bit more experienced, and if anything in particular has stuck out to you.
Oh, Well, I mean, I think publishing during a pandemic is definitely a unique experience in and of itself. I think especially for me, publishing last summer was great, but also it felt like I was splitting attention because people were so focused on, the pandemic and then the protests and everything, as rightfully they should have been. And then, you're just like, I have a book. Here, follow me on Instagram, read. So I think it's kind of, you learn how to really, really get the girls' attention when you have to kind of shout with everything happening in the world. So that's one of the things I've learned so far.
Yeah, I think I have to agree. Learning like the curve of like staying relevant in what you're doing in your art, but also paying attention to like what's going on in the news and not being tone deaf either. Like when the George Floyd, when the verdict came in for Derek Chauvin, I posted one thing about the situation, and then I kind of like went radio silent. Like I kind of like wanted to respect what was going on and things like that. So yeah, it is a balance.
Yeah. And I think just exceptionally also just there's people who suddenly have all this free time in the world to like read and stuff, but then there's always everything else is changing. So it's kind of that good and bad flip flop between is now a good time to publish or is it a terrible time to publish? Because with my debut, it came out in the January of 2020. So things were kind of relatively normal at that time. We had heard about, something's happening over in China, but that was all really at the moment. And it went from being like, oh, maybe hopefully we won't have to worry about that to, the situation we were in. So it was a mess, to be honest. But at the same time, I feel like it awarded me lots of opportunities I wouldn't have had to publish and meet people. So it's kind of that double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's been something else. And I also just noticed the other day I was on TikTok, as I tend to be, and I do follow several different people who are writers or working in the creative process. And this one TikTok really stood out for me, not because the person said anything wrong or anything, but they were like, when you have a character, you don't really have to describe them physically because readers will fill in the blanks in their mind. But I feel like since the majority of characters look very similar, they're mostly all white and young and whatever, it's really difficult for us if we have characters that look different from that to portray that in a way that fits the story. So how have you guys felt with that experience?
I describe
yeah.
That's just it, because I feel that there's not enough Black characters, period, Black or brown people. So when it comes time to, like, Kyla Emery, I'm very upfront with. She is a dark-skinned Black woman. She has locks that are short and curly. Readers know that going in. Like, of course, there's some interpretation of, like, what her dress may have looked like at a particular moment or things like that. But y'all gonna know she a Black woman. So, yeah. And y'all gonna know her love interests are Black men. Like, those things are spelled out. Like, these are Black people.
I think that's incredibly important. Something that I think maybe I'm struggling with that a little bit, because I've had people, the clues I put in my books tend not to be as black and white, either just because of how the story is progressing or whatever. So I've had some people who've been like confused or surprised when they found out, oh, like this main character is Black. And part of me is like, no, that was important. But at the same time, because the story isn't necessarily centered around the character's race, it can be kind of hard to like shoehorn it in a way that feels appropriate to me. But at the same time, I know it's incredibly important to have that distinction and representation.
Yeah, I mean, for my book, I kind of put it a little bit in the back text where I wrote that, Mercury being a witch and then being Black are basically two strikes against him in this world that I've created. And so that already kind of tips readers off. But if readers aren't kind of picking up on that, then I do spell it out in the book, especially the fact that the cast in my book is kind of diverse, and that Mercury, Joelle, and Griffin are all Black. Salone is Latinx, and then Ellis is the token white character. But most of the other people that are important in the story around Mercury, his father, his aunt, friends, they're Black as well. And I really wanted to, I think especially because this is a magical book, I really wanted to hammer home that these are Black people, these are people of color, because too often we have books with magic where you'll have a Black character that is like the friend or that is the classmate. And I really wanted to be like, these are Black witches. We're celebrating ourselves. We can be magic too.
Yes.
That's really what I wanted to put out in this book.
And I think you, Katrina, and Amanda, both of you are writing stories where I hardly ever see any POC representation in characters whatsoever. Just thinking about, fantasy and paranormal stories that are really popular, you don't see any characters that are people of color, which is absolutely crazy considering none of it's real. Anybody can look like anything. Everyone can be blue if you want it.
That's what bothers me so much. Like, I love the genre, but it's like, how do you create this fantastical world and there are no people of color?
Right? It's so odd.
And dragons and all this cool stuff, and there are no people of color. Not one.
Yeah. It's crazy. I was listening to, there's this podcast called Yo, That's Racist. I think that's what it's called. And they had somebody call in. They were talking about, I'm a writer and I'm writing fantasy. And this was a white writer. Should I include other races? And they kind of just felt like the way they were talking about it was very like mystical and mythology and like as if they were trying to include aliens and what that would look like. And people, just include them in your story. Like, what is the problem? Like,
I don't
it shouldn't be this crazy. And I think we're kind of having this renaissance of a lot of especially Black women writing magical type stories. I just got my copy of Witches Steeped in Gold, which I'm really excited to crack open. And I think that we need more like of that. And that's great. But it's kind of like, how are we at this point now where we're just starting to see more of these kind of stories?
And it's so crazy to me that that's like even an option for that person. For us, we don't get the option of like not including other people, which that was just so crazy to me. The fact that you were like, oh, should I include other people? I can't imagine living in a world like that, maybe just because I've always grown up with a lot of different types of people as well. So it would just be so odd and almost uncomfortable, I feel like, if everyone in the character, like in the story, was just all the same.
It should rise a level of discomfort. Like you would at least think, but I guess not.
You broke up there for a minute.
Oh, I was saying, yeah, you would think it would rise a level of discomfort to not include like other groups of people, but I guess not.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's honestly crazy. And another, it's not that it stops people from enjoying books, but sometimes you like, I wonder how this story would feel, if there was a bit more like inclusion, especially because I've always loved paranormal and fantasy books. Like you guys probably can't tell on my shelves, but I went through this whole like Cinder court of whatever phase where I just was like eating that stuff up. And all the main characters are kind of the same in my head. So if you ask me what does X, Y, and Z character look like? I couldn't really tell you because I feel like they all look the same. Yeah, it's
like there's this formula. Yeah, I agree. I know growing up, I mentioned it before, but I had to really get into reading because I didn't have the best relationship with it because of that. I was like, where are people who look like me? Like, it was just like non-existent, especially as a kid. Like, I remember growing up watching like Brandy's Cinderella. I love that movie.
Yeah.
That being like the staple, like fantasy black film that, I was in love with, or, a fantasy piece of fiction that I was in love with that featured people of color. But when it came to books, it was like, I was like, I hate reading. There's no one, that looks like me. But of course, I grew, to love it. But my dad, he was always like, you have to be a wordsmith. If you want to, see a change, you have to write the books you want to see. And then I took it and ran with it. I was just like, this is enough. Like, I was into like the vampires and all of the paranormal romances. Not a single one had a girl who looked like any of us.
Like, I remember when I was probably a preteen or in middle school, I just had this huge paranormal phase where I've always been a big reader personally, and I would just like buy anything free on Amazon, that sounded interesting. So I would go through books after books after books, and most of them were great books, but at the same time, they were all kind of similar, which not that that's a bad thing inherently, but at the same time, I was looking for something different. And I think that's something that I struggle with my books, because one of those token marketing questions is like, oh, if readers like this book, what, to like relay your own book to. And I found that very difficult to find books that I feel like properly have that relation. So it's just been a mess with that term, at least.
Yeah, I think it's also hard because, especially when you're kind of trailblazing, how do you compare your book? I mean, you could be like, oh, my book is similar to, this other YA romance, but if it's all white characters, then it isn't, because it is going to be different. And so I think, yeah, that marketing question, especially if you're querying or doing any kind of interview or anything, it's really difficult to answer. So I try to just say, I try not to say, my book isn't similar to anybody else's. If you like this other kind of stuff, you probably will like my book. If you like Children of Blood and Bone, if you like A Song Below Water, all that stuff, you probably might like my book. But it's not similar to anybody else's, just because, again, going back to the whole thing about Black witches as main characters.
Yeah.
There's not that
I can
many.
honestly say I've never heard of that, which is terrible. Like, until meeting you, I've never heard of a book like that, which is absolutely crazy. And for me, my characters in this book, one of them is Black and the other one is Korean. And there's a lot of challenges that come with that, between the two of them, but just for readers in general, because like 90% of the characters are people of color. So it's kind of difficult to like push that narrative, be like, these are the main characters and this is what they look like, especially with like media as well. I've noticed even if there is a rare piece of media where there is a person of color as a role, whitewashing takes over so much and it's so devastating. Or if there is like a black character or whatever, they're always like, oh, I would love for Zendaya to play her. And while I love Zendaya to death, we need more of that. Like, there are other black people to play
Zendaya
roles
plays
and
like
stuff.
every single black girl character.
Yes,
And
I love her too, but
Zendaya.
we do need a different one.
Yeah, and I think she's even like started saying that too, saying I'm only going to take roles specifically written for white women because we need other black women to be in the roles that are for black women, and you can't just be putting me on for all of these roles. I'm not the representation. I shouldn't be, and I can really appreciate that.
Yeah, because it's so hard to think of young people who have that level of success who are people of color. Like Zendaya is pretty much, I feel like everyone wants to dreamcast her because they don't have any other real people between her and I think Yara Shahidi. That's like the two young black actresses with any sort of like pull weight to them, which is so awful. Because I know there's so many talented people out there in the world that just like really need that chance to represent that, which is why I would say like, oh, if my books could turn into a movie or whatever, I would love to have a new cast, of like people who haven't worked in anything or have worked in very small projects, to kind of give other people those dream casts.
When you speak of Dreamcast, it makes me think about you talk about whitewashing. It makes me think about Storm, how she was kind of whitewashed, and I think her name is Kiki Lane. She's an actress from If Beale Street Could Talk, and she wanted to play like if they recast the role, she expressed that she wanted to play Storm. I don't think it went anywhere, but yeah, it is. It's really disheartening. It's kind of like there are more black women than Zendaya and Yara Shahidi. Like, thanks.
And even roles where like the characters aren't even human. I've noticed like Starfire, if you look at the old original kind of like comic books from back in the day, if you're coding her to a normal person, you could obviously tell that she has like black features and black whatever. But they're never like, they never ever put them as a minority unless I feel like they absolutely have to. They're like, oh, we don't need to, or even if everyone is a minority, like in the Avatar movies, they did that so dirty. Oh my gosh, so dirty.
That is the film we shall not speak of. That was terrible.
I feel like Avatar is just one of the best pieces of mainstream Asian representation, and they just like
they destroyed it. Destroyed, and it's crazy because an Indian American man was the director.
Right?
I was like, whoa.
I was like, aren't we on the same page here?
Yeah. I would have thought so. But speaking of Starfire, she actually is cast as a black woman in this new Teen Titans show. I think it comes on, I want to say it came on FX for a little bit, and they moved it to HBO Max. But she's black in that, so which is really cool. A dark-skinned black woman that. Yeah,
I think I saw that, and I feel like she's got like this really beautiful cherry red kind of
hair.
Oh, yeah. And I think I do. I think I've seen the pictures and her style. She's got this like fur coat, and I was like,
yep, has the fur
coat. I borrow that, girl? Yeah. I really want it.
And I also think not only with black representation, but like with mixed representation, it's always just black and white. When there's so obviously to be mixed, you can be a variety of anything. So that's when I was writing my stories and I wanted to have kind of an interracial relationship. I wanted to do something I had honest to God never seen before. I was like, let's put a black girl in love with a K-pop idol because I love K-pop and I love writing about it. And no tons of people who do. I was like, yes, give us a chance.
I love that. And on top of that, I feel like when it is an interracial relationship, it's not always, at least rarely, the black woman in love with a man outside of her race. It's usually a black man dating and then, XYZ woman. But yeah, you switched it up. I like that.
I was like, I gotta give something different. And it's because I read on top of a lot of published fiction, a lot of fan fiction as well, especially because the stories are like shorter and like easier to access. And whenever they write like characters that are self-insert characters. I grew up on Wattpad, so I'm used to this. They're always, and they give them details. They're always like, yes, I brushed my long blonde hair, or oh wow, she's so pretty, her pale complexion. I was like, first of all, is this not supposed to be me? And second of all, if you wanted to write a character like that, that's fine. But don't slap the label on anyone being able to imagine themselves in this scenario. So I was like, you know what? I'm doing this again. I'm writing it for me.
That makes me think. I had a conversation with my friend, Charlie Author, from Instagram, and it was so funny because we talked about how I seen one of these memes she posted in her stories, and it said like, when authors write, he ran his hands through my hair as we laid down, and she's like, she posted a picture with a bonnet, and she's like, what hair is he running his hands through?
You got that right, because if I woke up, my hair's a mess. Ain't nobody's fingers getting through it at all.
Silk bonnet for sure.
Yeah.
Silk scarf.
Or braided or something. You know, you gotta give us something.
Yeah, like, yeah, it's really cool to even think about how like just culture is just different. So yeah, it's important to have that representation, like say even down to like silk bonnets and greasing the scalp, and if the woman has braids in her hair, like you're not really going to run your hands through her hair necessarily. And if she go to bed, she's wearing her silk scarf. If she's a woman of color, if she's black, she is wrapped up somehow.
Yeah, I mentioned in my book that Mercury has a wave cap, and that's just my brother seen my whole life.
Yeah, the do-rag,
wearing a wave cap, do-rag, something like that. And so there's a scene where he hasn't had it the whole trip, and his dad's like, "You look great," and he's like, "I don't have a wave cap. This is ridiculous."
Yeah,
because he's so used to just protecting his hair, and he doesn't have that. And it's like, I don't think unless you kind of grow up with a bonnet or a scarf or wave cap or do-rag being essential part of your care regimen, that you would actually understand kind of that reference.
But and then I did something similar. Like in one of my books, my characters were taking a bath together, and he was like bathing her, and he was like, I didn't mess with her hair because I know it wasn't wash day yet. So just putting like small things in like that, to really show the differences as well, because especially considering how important hair is to Black beauty and culture, no matter like what it looks like, it's always been very important. So, and to just not glaze over that, you know, it's very important, I think.
Yeah, definitely agree. I was giggling at the do-rag. Waves on swim.
Yeah, it's very important. And I also think media also does Black men dirty. They always do them dirty, but like exceptionally with, they're never like the prince, you know, or like the main love interest or something. They're always like the second lead. Or like, I remember I was watching one of my favorite YouTubers, and she was talking about movies and how there's this trope of like the POC second lead or the spicy white second lead. And they never get picked ever. Like with Twilight, it was Edward and Jacob. Or even with 50 Shades of Grey, there was Mr. Grey and whatever his name was. And they're always not the good one. So I think it's very important, especially Amanda, that you have a Black main character who is the center of the focus.
Yeah, I really wanted to. I shouldn't have told my brother because he got a big head, but I told him I wrote this book essentially for him because he and I would read Anne Rice when we were younger, and we would just talk. We would drive around just talking about the book, kind of a little mini book club. And he never really got to see himself like in that role. And so when I gave him the book and he read it, he was like, "Oh, I really like this." I said, "Who do you like?" He said, "Mercury, who's my main character." I said, "Well, you should, because it's you basically." And he was like, "Oh, word."
Yeah, that's so sweet.
And I really wanted to kind of show, like, I especially wanted to show that vulnerable side of Black men, because I think that we don't really get to see that in media at all. That Black men can be anxious, and they can have moments where they doubt themselves. And even if they're supposed to be strong in a leadership role, they still have moments where they're probably questioning, can I even do this? And I really wanted to imbue Mercury with those traits, because I think it makes him more human and not just this powerful witch, Black man who can do whatever. He is that, but he's also vulnerable, and he misses his family and his brother, and he loves lattes and eggs Benedict, and he's like a whole person, and I really wanted to show that.
Yeah, that's another thing, is another reason why it was so important for my characters to have flaws, is because they never make us as people. In media, we're always serving some sort of purpose, which is not like inherently a bad thing. But that's all it is. You never just have a main character who is Black or Asian or Native or whatever just to be them. If there's no reason in particular why a character has to be white, I feel like there's no reason we should have such an overwhelming majority of characters who are just all white all the time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I did the same thing with my characters. They are very much flawed people. Especially Makai. He's the second protagonist, and Heavy is the head. And he can shapeshift into this really cool dragon, like literally like a beast. But Makai, he has a therapist, and there are moments, like you said, when he doubts himself, and there's moments where he's scared, and there's moments where he rather lay in bed and eat food all day instead of go out and be this powerful prince that he is. So I think it really is important that we show those dynamics of like people, period. Our skin is just different, but like you said, the media doesn't portray us that way. But so we have to do the work to show that, hey, like, we're regular, we eat, we cry, kind of thing. Because I feel like most times with Black characters are either like super overpowered, or it's like the what is it called? Like oh my goodness, it's a trope. It's like the supernatural, like Negro, like the helpful Negro kind of thing. And yeah, we're never like, the mammy, like we're never, like you said, we're always serving someone. We're never quite vulnerable. We're like,
or overly sexualized.
Yeah. Always. Oh my God, that's the worst.
Yep. Or the sassy friend coming through with the wisdom. I'm rewatching The Vampire Diaries right now, and I'm just watching the way that Bonnie's storyline keeps going, where she keeps losing things important to her at the expense of the other characters, and it just is it's just not sitting right with me, because it makes me wonder if they had done what I think they had initially wanted to do, which was cast Bonnie, a white actress, to play her, if the storyline would be the same, if Bonnie would consistently be the one having to sacrifice, or if they do that because she's a Black woman. It's unsettling.
Yeah. And then I've never seen the show, but I did watch someone rant about it for 2 whole hours. And what I've gathered is there's also seems to be a lot of like Confederate vampires. I don't know what's up with that. Like, if they wanted to be from back then, why could we not have Union vampires? Like, why? Especially, and then they're interacting with Black people, does not feel right to me.
It's like it's set in Virginia, and one of the brothers had been a Confederate soldier who deserted, I think, and then But there's a scene where they're watching like a movie kind of on the green, like a movie outside. And that's cool, but it's Gone with the Wind. And I just was kind of thinking, so they're going to watch Gone with the Wind, all these white people, and then you have Bonnie that's just supposed to be sitting there watching Gone with the Wind.
Supposed to be just chilling, yeah.
And she's just supposed to be chilling, eating her food. And I'm like, there's no way I'd want to watch Gone with the Wind with any white members of my family, any like white friends. No, we're not watching that movie together. Like, it just feels so tone deaf, especially like, and they filmed it in like 2010, but still, it shouldn't. No.
Yeah, and I remember when I was in 11th grade, we were reading Of Mice and Men, which I think is a great book, and I enjoyed it. But I was the only Black girl in the entire class, which that book is so racist. And my teacher was white and just read the whole thing, and it was hard R's and just kept going. And it makes you feel so powerless also, because I was like, I'm just a kid. I'm just a student. I'm sitting here listening to this,
Yep.
and I don't know what you want me to do, and it feels very panicky. And even though I really enjoyed the book, I was like, did she have to read this book out loud to a bunch of 11th graders? Really, it's not a difficult book to read. Like, it has those important messages that are reflective of the time, but like she didn't skip it or nothing, so it was so uncomfortable. And I feel like whenever they put that scene in media, they also do it all the time. Like, I've noticed with hijabi women, where there's always a scene where like some man takes off her hijab or whatever, and I'm like, why would you do this? It's so uncomfortable for us.
Yeah, I recently saw a video. There's a YouTuber, I think her name is T Noir, I think, and she did a whole series on kind of the caricature of Black women and how kind of the funny joke was snatching a Black woman's wig off, and how that was supposed to be funny, but it's so dehumanizing because, like you said, like hair is so important to Black women and Black culture, and just what that would mean, and people not realizing that association. So I kind of feel like it's in that same vein of like removing something that is kind of sacred or just so valuable, than just really stripping that person of their humanity.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I used to go to school, like normal school with my hair natural, which I did more like as I got older. I remember even if people meant well, I got like, oh, you look just like my poodle comments, or like, oh, can I touch your hair comments? Where I know in their heart they weren't being mean and didn't see a problem with that. And I was like, why would you do, or even worse, like my mom said, she would have random people come up to her and not even speak and just put their hands in her hair. And it's so dehumanizing, and no one likes to be touched without permission, regardless.
It's almost like beauty not belonging to you. Like, you belong to them, and they can like assert themselves onto you whenever they please. So yeah, no, I've definitely been in all of those situations. It really does suck. Like, so you get like this panicky feeling, like how you say you're sitting in class, you're the only Black girl, obviously the only Black girl, sitting there. And like, it's just not a good feeling. Everyone's looking at you as the hard R's get read out loud.
Yeah, it was so awkward because I was just sitting there by the window, like not looking up at anyone. I didn't want to say anything either because I was like, well, technically she's not doing anything wrong, because this is the assigned material. And I knew like if I had complained about it, then it wouldn't be dealt with properly. So I was just, it's those small boats of racism that I feel like we see now more, because she was never mean to me. She didn't grade me unfairly, none of that stuff. She was always polite to me. But at the same time, I feel like to feel comfortable doing something like that and reading like that out loud could never be me. Like, I know when there's slurs towards other minorities, whether it's like in a song or in a book or whatever, I always just like skip right over it because I know how that feels.
Yeah. It's a microaggression.
Yeah. But yeah, Amanda, didn't you say you had to get going soon?
Yeah, I gotta sign off. It's like I said, curse of having a 30-minute lunch break as an adult.
Yeah.
Just feels so.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I'm in college.
I had some great discussions with you guys, though.
What'd you say?
I said I had some great discussions.
It's Friday. Oh, my bad.
Yes, and it's Friday. You're good. It's hard to know the cues when we do it like this.
Yes, I had a great time. We should definitely do this more often. I really like this. I think maybe, talking again more on what we learned this year and maybe some tips moving forward would be good. I enjoy this a lot.
Yeah, me too. It feels so nice to like know other people are experiencing the same struggles and wants as you. But quickly before you go, please tell everybody where they can find you and your books.
Yeah, so my book is To a Stare with Love. You can find it on Amazon. You can also find it on the Melanin Library, which is a library that features Black authors. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Amanda the Author with 2 E's, like Megan Thee Stallion, and on Twitter Amanda the author with one E because Twitter has a character count and they just let me down. So.
And you, Katrina?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as well at Katrina Writes. Katrina Writes _. He has an underscore in there. And Heaviest Ahead, Love and War comes out May 17th. All of the information are in the links in my bio, my Instagram and my Twitter. So yeah, so check me out.
I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Wisteria Rose. So please follow me if you haven't. And I've enjoyed so much having these two wonderful ladies on stream with me today. Please check out their work. They're so talented and so sweet. And I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ooh, let me end the broadcast.